You can hear me? My name is Claire Evans. I'm Deputy Head at Anderton Park Primary, and I'm going to be hosting tonight's webinar. So thank you for joining. And I just wanted to start off just saying well done, because at this precise minute in time, you've probably got a few children in your class, in your school. You've maybe done juggling homeschooling yourself. And I just want to say a massive well done to all of you, because I feel like this has been something that none of us could ever have seen when we're doing our teacher training, and we don't say it enough. So first of all, well done. Right, so my name's Claire. I'm Deputy Head at Anderton Park Primary. I've worked here for 13 years and I've been Deputy Head for 4 years, and before that I was Assistant Head 6 years. So I know the school and I love working here, and it's a real privilege to come here every day. So I'm just going to share some things with you this afternoon, strategies that we've used for teaching children with English as an additional language. Some of them you might find useful, some of them you might not find useful, some of them you might think, well, actually that would work, but this bit wouldn't, we really want to change it. So none of what I'm saying might work for you. So adapt it, change it, and just really think about it. I just want to point out this little chap in the right hand corner over here. You might see a little dolphin wiggling around on the screen. This is Hector the protector. I can't get him off the screen, unfortunately, so he's going to be with us for the webinar, and he is there for our children. It's a safeguarding thing, so if they see anything on the internet or on the computer that they think that they shouldn't, they click on Hector and their screen goes blank. So this is Hector, in case you're wondering why there's a dolphin swimming around. So we're going to have some questions at the end of the meeting. You can use the chat function and push those through as well, and I will try and answer as many as I can at the end. If I can't answer them, I'm going to give you my email address and my Twitter handle as well if you want to get in contact. So this is Anderton Park. It's a Victorian building. We've currently got 540 children on roll, and it's in the Spark Hill area of Birmingham. And here is the inside of our school. It's nice and bright. You kind of wouldn't expect that from the outside because it looks quite an old and decrepit building from the outside, but inside it's all white. And I have to be honest, it doesn't look like this at the minute because most of this area has been taped up because of introducing our children back to school. So about 12 weeks ago, this is what it looks like. So just hold these thoughts in your head. We've got lots of libraries, we've got lots of reading nooks everywhere, and we've just really made English and reading and language like quite hard-hitting when you come into school. And these are our lovely children. Here they are, look at their little smiley faces. Gorgeous. And this is the staff. So this is our lot. We had this photo taken in January this year, I think. So in case you're wondering, that's me in the middle in the yellow jacket, and the lady in front of me in the pink, that's Sarah Hewitt-Clarkson. She's the head. So yeah, it's a great staff team. I do love working here. Right, so our values at Anderton Park, and our values really underpin everything that we do. So I'm going to tell you about our values because then this comes through in the way that we teach and the way that we teach EAL children. So our values at Anderton are relationships, aspirations, and sparkle. So relationships are our #1 priority, and we go on about them all the time because relationships are the single most important thing that we think. And that's our relationship with children, our relationship with families, our relationship with each other, children's relationship with their families. It is so important. And you need to be able to form good relationships to be a successful adult and successful in your life. You can have great A-levels and GCSEs, and you can get a first, but if you can't form good relationships, you will really struggle in life. So we put a lot of we prioritize relationships. Aspirations, because we really want children to challenge themselves. We want them to aspire to do something that makes them happy. And sparkle, and this is the one that always kind of raises an eyebrow when I'm talking to parents, and this is really important to us at Anderton Park. Sparkle, because everybody is different and we love different at our school, and everybody sparkles in different ways. You might really sparkle at reading, somebody else might really sparkle at gymnastics, and everyone has something different about themselves that sparkles, and we want to really find that in those children. And those are our values. Right, so recently I got in touch, during lockdown, I got in touch with one of my old school teachers. So I was 40 in lockdown, and I think maybe kind of made me think a little bit. And I thought, you know, there's a teacher who when I was at school, when I was 18, when I left school, he really made a difference. And I've always thought about him, and I've always thought about his style of leadership, and the way that he used to make children feel. He really challenged us, you know. He was my art teacher. He really pushed me, but it was more than that. And you really got a sense that he really cared. So I wrote him a letter in lockdown, and I put my number on there, and he got back in contact, and we chatted on the phone, and then we've had a few text conversations, and we talked about his style of leadership. I said it's really been making me think recently about the fact that he used to do what was right. He didn't often do everything that everybody else did, but he did what he felt was right for himself and for us. And he then shared a quote with me, and I'm going to use this quote because I love it. And I think actually at Anderton Park, this really sums up things that we do and we feel. So this quote is by Maya Angelou. You might have heard of it. And it says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I really, really love that, because I think when you're thinking about children, and this webinar is about English as an additional language, and I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about children who are newly arrived from another country, and it's this feeling that maybe they've had a really hard time traveling through different countries. We've had many children arrive with their families from Europe, and they've said we weren't treated very well in the country that we've just come from, or we've escaped. Everyone's got their own story, but they come here and they choose our school, and it's up to us to make them feel really, really included and valued, because they didn't have to come to this school. They could have chosen another school. They've chosen you. And I feel that when these families start here, that we need to make them feel so special and part of our school, because that will really make a difference in their learning and then feeling like they belong here as well. So I love this quote, and I love the fact that my ex-teacher gave it to me. Right, so we put a lot of pride in making children feel welcome and feel valued, especially those who are newly arrived from another country. I had a family last week, so they started virtually, which is something I haven't done before. They are newly arrived from Hong Kong. They came about 3 months ago, and they speak Cantonese. They also speak Spanish, because their father is third generation Pakistani but lives in Hong Kong. Mum is Venezuelan, speaks Spanish, so the children speak Spanish and Cantonese and some English. I just love that. You know, I was born in Nottingham. My mum and dad are from Nottingham. It's amazing to hear these stories, and I love listening to them. And this dad showed me a bit of paper, and it had on there that it was from the school they'd come from, and it said, you know, your daughter in year 2 has a lower level IQ than the average person. Now, I was just shocked. I said, we just don't use that language. And he went away from that meeting, and he said, I'm so glad that we've come here. I know that I've made the right decision to come to this country, because I know that there's more education than just getting great results at the end of schooling. And he's right, because there is way more to education than that. So I've been asked in this presentation just to kind of tell you what we've been doing since lockdown. So this bit in the middle where it says sorry we're closed, that is a bit of a joke, so please don't turn off your PowerPoint, because obviously we haven't been closed. Schools have never been closed. We may not have had many children in, but we have not been closed. So we've been here every day. We've had some children in. We did have a period of time where we had no children in, but we still came in because there are obviously lots of other things to do. We had the office was open daily, and we've taught our children via Teams. So similar to this, our teachers have taught live lessons every day. so that they can still kind of keep that contact, because I talked about relationships. Relationships are really important, and we felt that children needed to be seeing or hearing their teacher daily, even though they weren't in school with them. So we've done live lessons on Teams, and as we start to open wider, we're going to continue those live lessons, but we're also going to have some children in school taking part in them and some children at home. We've also had online learning on the website. So this was something that we set up within the space of about 48 hours, as I'm sure you all did, before schools closed. Everybody got a password so they can log into the website, and teachers get weekly work on the website. We've also done some quite a few home visits because of the families that we couldn't get in touch with for various reasons. So just going around, seen them on the doorstep or seeing them through the window, just to know that they're there and they see us. Because often families, maybe who are disadvantaged, or families who don't speak English, if they don't speak English, this is a really difficult time for them. So knowing that we're here and still able to help them has really meant a lot to some of our families. Free school meal vouchers. So I don't know if there's anyone who's been dealing with Eden Bread, or Eden Dread, as it's now been named on Twitter, I think. So that was a point in my life that I don't really want to go back to. A real struggle, having to get online at midnight to try and get some vouchers for your families, but we did it, and you've all done it as well, so well done. So in addition to those free school meal vouchers, we found that a lot of our newly arrived families and the disadvantaged families, some of them didn't have any recourse to public funds. A lot of our newly arrived families from Europe were paid cash in hand jobs, which have ceased, so they had no income. Now, not only did they have no income, but then they obviously had no money, so they didn't have any data on their phone because they couldn't afford to top up their phone, which meant they couldn't call us to ask for help. And if you want to register with a DWP, you have to have an email address, which means you have to get onto the internet, which means you have to, so everything is stacked against them. Now, we could have helped them to do that, but instead we just went to Asda and bought £3,000 worth of vouchers on the school credit card. And when families came to us to say they were struggling, we gave them an Asda voucher, and I firmly believe that was the right thing to do. We're not going to get that money back from the Department of Education, and it doesn't matter, because what's important is that those children were fed. We did, at first we started saying, well, give me a list of things that you want me to get and I'll go and do a food shop for you, or I would just go and do a food shop. But then, I struggle with my husband going to do a food shop. He doesn't get half the things that's on my list. You just want to do your own food shop. So we just thought it was easier and better for everybody, and also giving the family the independence that they want and that they need to be able to go and buy their own food. So we've done that, and we're continuing with that as well. That's going to carry on for as long as is needed, really. And we've kept tabs on it, but we haven't asked for any evidence they're not getting anything, because there's a lot of trust in this with our families, and we know how hard it is to ask for help, and they're asking, so we can help them. So that's a great feeling. So we've also had weekly and twice weekly phone calls to children from teachers, and also food bank drops. So we've arranged with our local food bank. We go and pick up the food bank, and then we take it around and deliver it to different houses. And we've also spent about £3,000 on CGP books. I mean, what would we do without CGP books? And for those families who can't get online, we've done a pack for them. Some families just want printed worksheets. They've only got one device. They've got 5 children. It's a struggle to share it out between everybody, so they just want a workbook. So we've done that as well. And there's probably many things that you've done as well. And what's been really difficult is that there hasn't been no set way to do things. You just have to find your own path. And you've all done it brilliantly. You might have done it differently, but everyone's done it. So well done. Just to say, there's a thunderstorm here, and all I can hear is thunder at the minute. So I don't know whether that's coming through on the mic, but it might get quite exciting a bit. Right, so come in, we're open, / we've never been away, because schools have never been closed. But anyway, right, so we didn't open on the 1st of June, and I'll tell you why. And before I kind of go through this, this is not me saying this is how to do it, and if you've opened on the 1st of June, you're wrong, because everybody, no matter what date they decided to open, is right, because you've done it for the right reasons for your school. So our story is that we are in Birmingham. We were sent out the report by the Independent Stage Group, and the report stated that that they didn't feel, the Independent Stage Group didn't feel that schools were safe to open on June 1st, and it listed various reasons. And one of those ones here in the middle talks about BAME or disadvantage. Now, our children are BAME and disadvantaged. They also live in intergenerational households. A lot of our families live with their grandparents and always have done. I had a dad yesterday who I saw on the pavement, and he said, "I'm not sending my child back." And I said, "That's absolutely fine. We're here if you change your mind." He said, "Look, I live with my 84-year-old mum and she's not very well, so I'm just not going to do it." And I said, "And that's the right decision for you." So it has been really difficult. We started thinking we were going to open on the 1st. Then we talked it through with the governors and the staff, and we said, right, okay, we'll open on the 8th. Then we read the Independent Stage report and said, no, not going to open on the 8th. We're going to push it to the 15th. So we started on Monday for Year 6. We've got Year 1 coming back tomorrow, reception on Monday. But because we've had such low take up, we've actually opened it to anybody who wants to come in the whole school. So I think next week, out of 540 children, we've got 68 children coming in on Monday. And I can't wait, because it's a very bizarre place school when there's no children in it. So we're all really, really excited. Not to say that we haven't spent hours and hours, like you all have, planning on what we can do to reopen safely. And we've put lots of measures in, all my systems. We've got our social distancing, staggered times, small groups. We're having groups of 8 because we've got mainly BAME, we've got mainly BAME staff as well. So we haven't gone to 15, we've taken it down to 8 in Key Stage 2 and 10 in Key Stage 1. And we've also had some of these made. So these are, I saw this as an advert, I think, a nail bar. So they had this, and they had a little bit, the perspex sheet cut out at the bottom. Anyway, I got on Facebook and put a post out on my local group and said, does anybody have a machine that might be able to make some of these screens? So then we designed them together, which was fun. So these screens, they haven't got the bit, because we're not a nail bar, we're a school. So they haven't got a bit cut out at the bottom. They've got feet, which you can move inwards and outwards. And we've actually now had it cut, so you've got a little handle at the top so you can carry them around. So I have spoken to the person who designed these, and he said, if you want to buy some, you can have them for a discount, 40 quid instead of 63, using the discount code there, which is JNWPPE. And what we're going to be doing with those is using our TAs, because we decided that we didn't want a TA and a teacher in a class, because we're trying to minimise contact. So we're having a teacher in the class, and then what we're asking TAs to do is to work outside the classroom. And what they're going to do is do one-to-one reading with the children, so you can sit next to each other because you've got the screen in between you. You can do some catch-up phonics, catch-up reading, and get close to children, but without putting themselves or the children at risk. So everyone's really excited by that, and we're going to start using those on Monday. Okay, so our school then, these are all the heritage. This is the heritage of our children. You can see there, I think we've got 22 different countries of origin. But most of these children were born in Birmingham. So part of our school curriculum is about being a Brummie, because some of our children have a bit of a conflict to know where they're actually from. So they are brought up feeling that they're Yemeni or Egyptian or Afghan or Bangladeshi, and they are, but they're actually also UK citizens, and they're Brummies because they were born in Birmingham. So we do lots of local visits, and we really try and get that sense of pride of being a Brummie. The languages, we've got 20 different languages spoken. Like I said, most of our children are born in Birmingham, but their first language would not be English. They would learn their home language first, and then move on to learning English. Most of them, when they come to school, most of the families leave English until the children start school. So those are all the different languages there. So when children start with us, we would code them, and I think this is quite a well-known coding system. I mean, it's not that difficult, it's pretty basic. So we've got A and B, A, which is new to English, B, early acquisition, and then we go on to C and D, which is that developing competence, and then E, which is fluent. I wouldn't say we have any children who are at that fluent stage yet. And we split the EAL into kind of two sections. So we'd have this new to English, A and B, early acquisition, as our newly arrived EAL learners. And then we have this developing competence and being competent, and that's everybody else. So we don't currently have anyone who we would say is fluent. And I'm going to talk about our strategies for using those who are new to English, and then I'm going to talk about our other strategies that we use for those who are developing competence. Okay, so pre-webinar work then. So when you registered for this webinar, you would have been sent a little a pack because I just wanted you to do a few things. So using the chat function, I'm going to read out these words here, and I want you to write down the meaning of those words in the chat. Okay, so fast fingers, fast as you can, get these words, get the meanings pushed out through the chat. So the first word is bombelate. You could start putting that through. And then the next one is glabrous. You could write down the meaning of that. And we've got autotonsoralist, erinaceous, and choir. Okay, so it appears I hadn't sent, so you haven't received that. Okay, so let's learn it now then. Right, so let's go through it quickly and I'll teach it to you. So bombelate means to buzz or hum. So this is new learning, I think, for most of us. Glabrous is when you're free from hair or down. Autotonsoralist is the art of cutting one's own hair. Good word for something so simple. Erinaceous is when you resemble a hedgehog. And choir is 24 sheets of paper. Okay, right, so let's have a go. So autotonsoralist. See if you can now type in the chat, using the chat function, what autotonsoralist means. See if you can remember. We just whizzed through it. There it is. So autotonsoralist, art of cutting one's own hair. So give yourself a tick if you get these right. Everyone loves a quiz. Next one, we've got erinaceous. Okay, see if you can remember what erinaceous was. Resembling a hedgehog. Give yourselves a tick if you get that one. Next one, choir. Okay, see if you can write it down. 24 sheets of paper. Give yourself a tick. I'm saying tick because I'm expecting you to get all of these right. Bombelate, write that one down. Buzz or hum. Okay, last one, I think. Glabrous. Oh, sorry, glabrous. Just gave you a little sneaky peek then, so you've definitely got to get this one right, so I've just given you the answer. Free from hair or down. Okay, so just told a little fib then. I didn't actually send them through as a pre-webinar work, so you haven't had these. That was a complete fib, but I wanted you to start to feel how it might be, how children who are newly arrived might feel. So you came into this webinar, you signed up, maybe you were told to sign up, maybe it's your staff meeting time, and you probably got a cup of tea, maybe some biscuits, and you were unconsciously incompetent. You had no idea what I was going to make you do. You probably thought that you're just going to plug your earphones in and listen. You had no idea, and you were quite happy with that. Then I said, right, I'm going to give you a test. Write down these words. And suddenly you fall right into the bottom of this this line here, this learning line, and now you have conscious incompetence. So utter panic. You know you can't do it. Your heart rate will go up. You think, I haven't been given these words. She hasn't sent these words to me. I haven't got them. I don't know what bombolate means. And you start to panic. Now, the problem is that a lot of children who arrive from different countries spend a lot of time in this state, in this anxious state. And if you're in this anxious state, there is no way that you can learn because of the state that you're in. And what we've got to do is ensure that, yes, we go into that state, but we move straight back out and we come up the other side and we learn. So, conscious incompetent, utter panic, now you know you can't do it. Then I told you what the words meant. We had a go, and you have conscious competence. So you know you're getting better. You know that what bombolate means now, to buzz or hum. You know erinaceous. You know an autotonsoralist is somebody who cuts their own hair. You know that now, and you're getting better at it. And if I tested you at the end of this presentation, you'll be able to tell me straight away because you know. But a few minutes ago, you didn't know, and you were in that panic mode. And what we want to make sure is that children don't spend too much time in that panic mode. So then you come out the other side, and now you are unconsciously competent. So you have unconscious competence, and you can think about it. Sorry, you can do it without even thinking about it. You just know it. Okay, right. So let's think then about this anxiety being at the bottom. If you think about that learning line there, so we call this the learning line. We have this up and around school, and we talk about it a lot. We talk about, if you can look, you can see it. You go, the line goes across, and then we've got conscious incompetence down here. Now, we don't really use that with the children because it's quite a mouthful. But a lot of the children will say, "I'm in the pit. I'm in the dip. I do not get this. It's lost on me. Help me out. I'm down here." And it's just a way of them to verbalize how they are feeling at the minute. I know if they're in that pit, then they are panicking. And if they're panicking, then they're not going to be learning. And so very calmly, we will practice it. We will get better at it. And then you have that unconscious competence so you can do it without even thinking about it. So yeah, so anxiety causes the body to prepare itself for fight or flight. So if we're in that state, we're definitely not going to be doing any learning. So we've got to make sure that we are able to articulate with the children when they're in that dip. The reason we have it as a visual around the classroom is that so children who don't have much language skills yet, they can point. In some classes, they have their children's little face, and they might come and move their face and put it somewhere on the learning line so the teacher can really gauge what kind of state of learning those children are in. Okay, so at our school then, how does EAL work? We know that taking children out for lots and lots of intervention does not work, because if you're having loads and loads of intervention, that means that your teaching is not fit for purpose. Because if your teaching was great, you wouldn't need to take out so many groups all of the time. We do have children who go out for groups, but they are little and they don't last a very long time, and they are just as and when is needed. So that immersion in the language is really how you learn, hearing it over and over again, and repetition. So we do have small group teaching with TAs. Recently, we've had to make a lot of redundancies, so we don't have as many TAs as we used to. We've got one per year group now, and we're a 3-form entry school. So TAs are gold dust. And so whenever they do go out with TAs, it has got to be really meaningful and very well planned. And we actually want most of our children who are EAL to be spending that time in the class with the class teacher, because they are the ones who are the most qualified. We have well-structured reading lessons. A while ago, we did away with guided reading. We have guided reading in one-to-one reading in reception. We have one-to-one and some guided reading in year 1. And then from 2 upwards, we did away with our guided reading sessions, and we have what we've called comprehending comprehension, which is a whole class reading lesson. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. And we also use vocabulary instruction, and I'm going to talk you through that as well. So for our newly arrived children, we've got 2 TAs who are TEFL trained. We've got 3 TAs who run the Flash Academy with our newly arrived learners, and they have 1 hour per week in small groups. We also have a lunchtime club. This was something that we tried. We didn't know whether it would go down because it's at lunchtime, and we didn't know whether children would love it. We thought we'd kind of ask them, would you like to come in one lunchtime and learn English and play on the Flash Academy app? And they all did, which was awesome. So we do it as a lunchtime club, so that's excellent. And then we've also done a session with the parents where we got the parents in and we showed the parents how to use the app. They sat next to the children, so they were learning English as well. Our parents do love that because their children want to go on their phones or they want to go on an iPad or a tablet. Whereas actually, if the parents can say, yes, you can go on Flash Academy and learn English, it's a win-win. Children get to play on an app, and little do they know they're actually learning English as well. So they love that, and we love that too. So the impact of that on our EAL learners. So this is our newly arrived EAL learners. We only use this with the children who come to our school straight from another country, or if they're in that A/B EAL coding. So this is who uses our the Flash Academy app. It's only a small group of children, and it's a changing group because they don't arrive, get the app and use it forever. They use it for a couple of months, and then we'd kind of wean them off it because then they would make more progress being in class and learning with everybody else. But you can see from my table here of data that that the progress is brilliant. So in reading, we expect for the children to make on average 4 points progress a year. That's our system that we use. Everyone's got a different system. But what we're finding is the children who used the Flash Academy app, who are EAL newly arrived learners, they made an average 5.4 progress point. But the range, if you look at there, some children made 12 points progress in a year. So these newly arrived children, when they come, we really find that they just start to soak up that language and to lap it up. We really want them to be inquisitive. My husband's a secondary teacher, and in September every year without fail he will moan about year 7s because they ask too many questions. That's because at primary school we get them to ask questions all the time. We want them to be asking about something, and if they don't know, they've got to find out or learn. And then they go to secondary and they swatch it out. Apologies if there's any secretaries here. I know you're not all like that. This is just probably my husband. So the rapid rate of progress and learning is phenomenal. We had a girl a couple of years ago, and we've kind of coined the phrase. We now call it the Our-Tef effect. This is what we want our children. So she was called Our-Tef, and she arrived. She didn't speak English. She arrived in year 4. From another country, I can't remember which one it was, and she started to pick up the language, and she would come and ask you and say, I remember her saying, Miss, what is this cup of tea? What is this cup of tea? And he said, well, you know, a cup of tea is like a cup of tea, but it's kind of changed, the language has changed, and we explained why. And we said, you know, you might say, oh, do you fancy a cup of tea? That would be a sentence that we might ask, or a question we might ask each other. She said, okay. And then she came back the next day and she said, I asked my mum, I said, Mum, do you fancy a cup of tea? So she just had this real want to learn and to absorb all this language. And it doesn't happen by osmosis. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens because you have that passion with the children and that they really want to learn. And you can see there as well, I've got the range of progress for writing as well. And again, look, some children make 14 points progress in a year, which is just amazing. And the immeasurable parts of using Flash Academy. You know, I talk about that quote that my old my ex-teacher sent to me about that feeling of value, that people will remember how you made them feel. And going out as a little group, having fun on this app that not everybody gets to do, and you know, taking it home and being able to work on it with your parents, they just felt really valued because they hadn't had that before. Our TAs love it because they can see children working together on it, and children who wouldn't necessarily sit next to each other then start to get a little bit competitive, and they can see that that person's on that lesson and they're a little bit behind. So there's that real competitive nature of it, which is brilliant. Children are engaged in it, they love it. It reduces workload because it doesn't need to be planned for, it's all planned for you. You can work through it. Quick rewards. So yeah, lots of progress made, but also children feel that real sense of value. And it was so good, we actually made it onto the EdTech 50 schools list last year. So this is myself in the yellow dress and Sarah in the green dress, with VJ, who's the CEO of FlashAcademy, being rewarded at the House of Lords, I think it was, for our work on the EAL app. So that was pretty special. Okay, right, so here are some of our children here. I've just got some photos. We've got at the bottom in the middle, we've got a little girl working on a tablet with her mum. That's when we invited parents in, because we want them to be doing this at home as well. We say to parents, you need to get CBeebies on. You can't be watching any television that's not English, because they've got to hear that language, put the subtitles on so they're reading it as well, just to really get those parents involved. And so you can see lots of smiling faces there. That's fab. Okay, right, so this rapid increase then in vocabulary. So these are the two aspects I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about vocabulary, and then I'm going to talk about these, about understanding text. So, vocab. We have text in every lesson. It doesn't matter what lesson it is. If it's a P lesson, there's still a piece of text on the interactive whiteboard before that P lesson starts. It might be instructions on how to play the game. It might be looking up a famous person. We're also really passionate about making sure that the people we read about and learn about aren't all of the same. They aren't all males, or they aren't all females. So we want a real diverse group of people who we learn about, and we're really conscious about choosing those people. So text in every lesson could be about one of those persons. It's a really big thunderstorm now, so I don't know whether you can hear it. Okay, right, we have something called comprehending comprehension, which I spoke about before, and that is in place of guided reading. So that is a whole class session. It's 20 minutes. It happens every single day. We use a book or a piece of text. We would we would read that book, talk about it. We'll use that in the moment reading strategies, which I'm going to come on to in a little bit. We also have 2 inference questions in every English lesson. It doesn't matter whether it's a writing lesson, or whether it's a speaking lesson, or whether it's a drama. There are 2 inference questions in every lesson, because we have to practice the bit that our children struggle the most at, and they struggle most at inference, and that is because of the EAL and the English as an additional language. That is the aspect of reading that they really struggle with. So we work really hard on inference. Right then, so moving on to this one, which is a book by Beck, McCowan and Kuchen. It's called Bringing Words to Life. It is a great book, so I would really recommend you reading this book. It's not a light read. It's very heavy on research, but that's quite interesting at the same time. So they talk a lot about this vocabulary and how important it is to change your vocabulary and upstage it. So we talk about tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 words. Some of you might be familiar with these. And tier 1 words we've got down the left hand side here, and those are the words that we use really often. Can you hand out the books, please? Can you try a bit harder? Oh, that's interesting. Really don't like interesting. I think it's quite a nondescript word. So what this book is about is trying to change your words from being tier 1, use the vocabulary, to tier 2. So instead of saying hand out the books, it would be, can you distribute the books? Instead of saying, right, let's gather together our work, right, let's collate our work. Look at this. Stop saying look at that, observe it or examine it, because observe and examine are 2 completely different words. So you get more of this range of meaning by upstaging your vocabulary. So So here is the diagram from the book. We've got those tier 1 words, which is words that you can get by. And they're often words which are learnt first, like talk, walk, stop, make. Then we've got these tier 2 words, and these are the words that we really want to work on and tease out, because they're the ones that we don't use very often, but actually they're the ones that give the most meaning. So for example, instead of using the tier 1 word walk, we might say Claire sauntered down the road, or Claire strutted down the road. They are 2 completely different words, and they give 2 completely different meanings. So using the word walk, we want to get rid of that, and we want to use those tier 2 words. Now you have to plan for this, and you have to do this as a whole school, because everybody's got to be using this vocabulary. And one of our children do this now because we taught them how to do it. And I was sorting something out at playtime quite a long time ago, and one of the children said, I said, right, come on, what happened? That something had gone on. I said, right, what happened? He said, Miss, we had an altercation. So happy. Now, it didn't say we'd had a fight, because if you'd said we had a fight, I would have thought, because fight means violent and it means physical. Now, it wasn't violent and it wasn't physical. So they had an altercation. An altercation is a noisy argument or a disagreement. And that's very different to a fight, because there are no fists. So being able to articulate exactly what happened really helped me, because I didn't get really cross that they'd had a fight, because they hadn't had a fight, it had an altercation, and we were able to work it out. So it's things like that that really make a difference in vocabulary. You've then got tier 3 vocabulary, which are those subject-specific words, where you wouldn't use them very often, and they are only used in certain situations, like photosynthesis would be used in science and talking about plants, and timbre would be used in music. So it's these tier 2 words that are often overlooked that you really need to work on. Right, so let's have a little look at these tier 1 and tier 2 words. So on the left hand side, you've got the tier 1 words, and on the right hand side, you've got the tier 2 words. So just have a little look and see if you can match up which one would go with which. And then I will I'll read them out. So we've got change, and we'd go to modify. Hide, go to conceal. Go before, we'd have precede. Important would be relevant, and take apart would be dismantle. So have a think now about what vocabulary would you choose? Which would be a tier 1 piece of vocabulary, and then how would you take that to a tier 2, and then how are you going to do that? So do you have a list, and we're not going to be using these words, we're going to be using these ones instead. So that's something to think about, is changing your vocabulary, because if you only ever use the words that children are expected to hear, there'll never be any of those questions that my husband loves so much in year 7. So keep those going. Right, so the book talks about a 6-step approach to vocab, and we call this 6-stepping. So at our school, we 6-step in every English lesson. So when you're reading your text, or when you're reading something off the board, the teacher would have already identified a piece of vocabulary that they think needs to be explained and needs to be taught. And by teaching that piece of vocabulary, that will really help the children to expand their vocabulary. So this is not something that's done off the cuff. This is pre-planned by the teacher in the planning, and it's 6 steps to the children. After 6-stepping, we expect that children know it. We might display it around the room, and we expect you to hear it. And now we make a bit of a game out of it. So after we've taught a word using 6-step, sometimes we say, look, okay, there's 100 house points up for grabs for somebody who can slip this word into the conversation in the right context over the next couple of days. And children love that. It's a bit of a challenge. So 6-stepping then. So what we do first is review the current context of the word. that's going to be taught. So where is it? Where does it sit in the text? Look at it as a sentence. Then provide a child-friendly definition. Now, what I haven't put on here, which I'll tell you, download a shortcut onto your desktop or save it as a web page, the Cambridge Learners Dictionary, because this is a brilliant dictionary that somebody shared with me once, and it is a child-friendly dictionary. Now, it's not like a really simple dictionary. It just simplifies the word, but it tells you the context of the word. It would give you examples. It's really great. So definitely have a look at that. Cambridge Learners Dictionary. So get a definition, then practice saying the word out loud. Make sure they're pronouncing it correctly. Have a play with it. How many syllables has it got in it? Can you say it in a quiet voice? Say it in a high voice. So just play around with the word and get a feel for the word. Then broaden the context, and then use it in a different context to help with the understanding of the meaning. And then interact with it, and then reinforce it by kind of like challenging the children. So I'm going to show you one of the words. So here's a 6-step. This is what it would look like on our board if we were in a lesson. So the word I've selected is predominantly. That's occurred in our text, and the sentence, it says, when searching for food, they predominantly use their sense of smell. Now, you need to know what predominantly means to understand the meaning of that sentence. Because if you think predominantly means the opposite of mostly or mainly, you've completely misinterpreted that sentence and you haven't understood it at all. That's why I've chosen the word predominantly. Then I would tell the children it's an adverb and this is what it means. And then we'll practice saying it predominantly. Tap it out. How many syllables has it got in it? Say it to your partner, say it to me, and then broaden it. So I would then tell them the adjective is predominant. So what does that mean? Let's have a talk about that. Then my challenge would be, Mrs. Evans, that's me, has many interests, but her predominant interest is art. What's your predominant interest? So I've changed the context of the word now. And then I would do a little bit of a test. So, all right, the teachers in this school are predominantly female. Is that true or false? And you will gauge from their answer whether they've really understood the word predominantly. So then I would say, right, brilliant, predominantly, let's get it on the wall. Let's remember that word. You've got to try and use it in your writing or with me or another teacher. I sometimes do it as a challenge. Say, see if you can say it to Mr. Sinclair without him noticing that you've used a new piece of vocabulary. And then they can come and report back to me if they've managed to do that. So just making it fun. Okay, so that was about a vocabulary. So if you can get that book, which is Bringing Words to Life, I would really recommend reading it. It's really great. Okay, right, so let's think about effective readers then. Now, you are all effective readers. You're all really good readers because you have practiced it many times. But sometimes we forget what makes us a good reader. It's not just about decoding, although you do need to be able to decode and read fluently and be able to read quickly. You've also got to have good vocab, and we've talked about vocab and oral language so that you understand what you're reading. And then these active in the moment reading strategies, which I'm going to come on to next, and then be able to answer questions after. Okay, so look at this joke. I mean, I know it's not the best joke in the world, but I think it's quite a good joke. So the worst job I ever had was drilling holes looking for water. It was well boring. So I want you to visualize the readers that you know, the children in your class or in your group or somebody that you know, and imagine that you're telling this joke to them. And I want you to think about what their facial expression would be. Some of them would fall about laughing. Some of them would groan and go, that's rubbish, but they've got it. Some of them would just look bemused. And the ones who would look bemused probably don't know what a well is, because you need to know what a well is to find that joke funny or get that joke. And you've also got to think about your knowledge of drilling, looking for water. You would drill down and a well would be quite low in the ground. So you've really got to have good background knowledge to get a joke. And that's really important in growing up in this country. You've got to be able to get jokes. You've got to be able to understand meanings of words. So the strategies that we would use for that are these ones here, which is read aloud and think aloud. So these are the strategies now that we use with all children. So I talked about a little bit about the newly arrived children and how we do small interventions, but by and large they are in the class and they are absorbing and being immersed in that language, and we would use an intervention as and when is needed, and it'd be very well planned for. So these strategies now we use with all the children in our school, from nursery all the way up to year 6. I didn't make them. I have magpied them from somebody else and adapted them, and they're brilliant. So these are called our in the moment reading strategies, and I'll go through them in a minute. We have them up everywhere. So I have them on my board. I've got them on a whiteboard here. You can see here there's some children. We actually have them on the back of exercise books as well, if you can see there. This is a child's exercise book, and they're on the back of there. So when we're reading, we would say, right, flip over, get your in the moment reading strategies out. So these strategies are like sentence openers, really. They are sentence prompts for reading, and they're what you, as a good reader, you do without thinking about it. You make connections. So if you're reading something about canals, you would, without thinking, think of a canal, and that you would think of a canal because you've seen one somewhere, or you've watched it on telly and you know that that's a canal. Maybe you've seen it on a program. Maybe you've read another book where there was a canal. So without thinking, you're making all these links to help you understand what you're reading. And we need to teach that to the children, because that doesn't come very easily for a lot of children. So these sentence prompts, I would encourage children to use them. So I say, right, okay, let's read this. Right, can anybody use their background knowledge? And someone would say, yes, it reminded me of another text, or reminded me of another film, and they would go on to explain it. So these sentence prompts give the children the ability to articulate what they want to say. Our children love them. They're always out. As soon as we start reading, they've got them there. And I would say, right, did anyone have a question? Someone say, Miss, a question that came into my mind was, and it would make them think, or at first I didn't understand, but then I thought about this, and then that made me think about that, and I used my background knowledge. So these are on show all the time and have really helped our children in all aspects of their reading. And you know it's good because when you're a subject leader, so I lead on English in our school, when you introduce something new to staff, sometimes you have to remind people to do it. Like, oh, don't forget we're doing the 6th step, or don't forget we're doing this. These in the moment reading strategies, I've never had to remind anybody to use, and they use them all the time because they're so great. So I would really, really recommend teaching those to the children in your class. I've done this PowerPoint also with the school that my own children go to. And my son, when I was reading him a bedtime story, he said, Mummy, I've made a text to self connection. So proud. And he loves it as well. He's not being forced to do it, but it just gives him a vehicle to be able to articulate exactly what he wants to say. So I'd really recommend using those. So that concludes me. Just about enough time to answer some questions. So before I do that, I just want to advertise the next webinar, EAL and Language Awareness, which will be on the 30th of June, and the registration details will be sent out to you. That looks like an excellent workshop, and I definitely recommend booking on that one. I will as well. Super. So thank you so much. Thank you for spending your time with me this afternoon. It's been a pleasure. I'll just have a look at some questions now and see if I can answer some. If I don't get to answer them, my email address is c.evans@anderton.beham.sch.uk. And my Twitter handle, if you want to contact me on Twitter, is Mrs. Evans 67, and that's fine as well. I think all this webinar is, you're able to watch it again. So if you did want any of the slides, you can get those. But also, if you email me, I can send you also what I've got if you want it as a Word document. That's not right. So let's have a look what we've got here. Could you share in the moment reading strategies as visual prompts and cue cards? So here we've got our strategy. So yeah, we have them on the back of our textbook. We also have them in some classes like taped to the desk, so they're in front of the desk. And we also have them as individual sheets, but then it kind of got a really big display. So yeah, use them in whatever way you think would be useful. Let's have a look what else we've got. How can you support students from different backgrounds to integrate, especially when there is a very large group from one country with little or no English, especially at secondary? Yeah, and we have that at primary as well, because what tends to happen is that one family, so we have a lot of Romanian children at our school, but the school a mile down the road has no Romanian children, but they have loads of Polish children. We don't have any Polish children. So yeah, what tends to happen is you get one group moving to one school, and then lots of their family members and their friends, they also come as well. Years ago, when we first started that, having lots of different children in, we did find there were subgroups. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, I don't think. We did encourage children to integrate with each other. Sport is a great way to do that. We also are very prescriptive of where children sit, and we call them talk partners. I know some schools call them learning partners. We devised the talk partners and the learning partners. So we would put children with each other. Sometimes you might put the newly arrived with somebody who also speaks their language, just to give them a bit of confidence. But then over time, we would move them around a bit. And I think we've just really tried hard not to sounds daft, but not to play on differences. I talked a little bit about how much we love difference, and we do love difference. But we are not divisive when we talk about children, and we don't divide children into groups. So as much as we can, we are consciously putting children together who would not normally go together. I hope that helps. Okay, do another one. Could you tell us the difference of progression using FlashAcademy and not using it? Did you record the progression before the use of FlashAcademy? No, I didn't. But because I've worked with the FlashAcademy team for a very long time now, and it was almost too good to not use it, if that makes sense. I didn't want a control group because I didn't want children to not use it. I've been a teacher for, I don't know, 18 years now, I think. And I know when something's good. So I didn't choose a control group, and I did that on purpose because I just thought it's going to help them somehow. So I just didn't want to take the risk of not using it with some children who I thought would really benefit from it. So sorry, no, I haven't got that data. Let's go for one more. How can you support the most disadvantaged EAL students who can speak little or no English at all and have no internet or computers while away from school? Any free links to teach basic English to support those students while they're at home? So what we did a while ago is we asked our parents if they had any mobile phones at home which they didn't use, smartphones, and we got them in and wiped them, and then we handed them back out to families who needed them, and they wouldn't come with a SIM, they'd only come so you could link them up to the Wi-Fi in the house. So I guess it would only work if the family had got Wi-Fi, and then they can download the apps on there and use that. So that worked well for us. I know there are companies out there who sell reconditioned iPads for quite a small amount, and also know that you can lease them. We don't buy any of our hardware anymore. We lease it so that we can just give it back when it becomes defunct, and we're not left with a load of hardware that we don't need. So yeah, that is it. So any other questions, either get in touch with me on Twitter or email me, and I'll try and get back to you. And that's it. So thanks ever so much.